All right.
All right.
Well,
Welcome back.
Yeah, we watch Dead People. It's Will
And Emma.
Yeah, this is episode 3, I guess.
Episode 3, and oh boy.
Oh boy, indeed.
We are doing it fresh from a viewing.
That's right. We just got back from seeing Us, the new Jordan Peele movie. The new nightmare from Jordan Peele, as they said in all the promotions, which was a little hokey. But Jordan Peele, of course, made Get Out, which came out 2 years ago now, and took the world by storm with its blend of social commentary and horror. And it actually went on to get some Academy Award nominations, and he won Best Original Screenplay, which is pretty cool, I actually think, for a horror movie to win it all. But he's back. He's back with this new film, Us, which he wrote and directed again, of course, and
produced. It said
and,
written,
and
directed,
produced.
and produced.
Yes, it's true. Don't want to leave that out. And it has Lupita Nyong'o, Academy Award winner. It has Winston Duke. What are the names for? Who are the actors who played their children? Because they were great. You have to reference the notes here to get their names. Shahadi Wright Joseph plays the daughter, Zora, and Evan Alex plays Jason, the son. And then rounding out the cast were Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker.
Great.
Yeah, very interesting casting, particularly with Tim Heidecker. But yeah, so you probably have seen the trailer for the movie. It's got that spooky rendition of I've Got Five on it, and this family on vacation is
to their beach home.
Yeah, well, their home isn't on the beach.
Okay, their summer home near a beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get specific.
Well,
no, it's fine. They're on vacation. It's summertime.
That's correct, and they are visited by a family of doppelgangers, sort of evil mirrors of themselves that are wearing red jumpsuits and wielding these scissors and proceed to terrorize them. That's sort of what the trailer...
Yeah, that's an overview, and we're kind of going to section this more than we have our past 2 episodes, because our past 2 episodes were movies that had been out and have been out for a while. This one's pretty fresh, so I think in the beginning we shouldn't give spoilers right away.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just thoughts.
Yeah, because this one people might not have actually seen just yet. So in the car ride back, my first instinct was to say that it was good, but it wasn't as good as Get Out. And
I couldn't help but make those comparisons.
That's hard not to, but it's been, probably an hour since we got back, and I've changed my mind.
We've already rethought everything.
Well, I don't know about you, but I definitely changed my mind.
We got on Reddit, and we looked at theories, and we were like, oh, crap.
Well, but we filled it out with a little online reading, but even in the car ride over, we saw it with our friend Blaine, and we slowly unpacked some of the things going on in the movie. And as I joked to Blaine, I mean, it's a grower, not a shower. Get Out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Get Out was a little more, it was good and it was clever, and there were clever things that foreshadowed what it was about, but it was still a pretty obvious commentary, whereas I think...
Yeah, I mean, the things to unpack were like in neat boxes right in front of you with labels that you opened and were like, yes, this metaphor. This movie, you see it and you're like, okay, I guess, and then you start thinking about it or chatting about it or looking up other people's opinions online and having discussion about what you read online, and all of a sudden it's like, oh man, because they're not clear boxes. It's like a pile of stuff, and you've got to like pick things out, and when you pick things, like the whole pile crumbles into different like sections. And well,
and one thing I wasn't expecting, and maybe this is a bit of a spoiler, so I'll just say that right now. The movie is more science fiction than I thought it would be. But for people who have listened, even though they haven't seen it and just heard this, it's not science fiction quite in the way I thought it was going to be. which I can expand upon later.
Yeah. I will say for people that hadn't seen it who are like me that don't like horror movies as much, it was not as scary as I thought it was going to be. I might have said this in the last episode. I was genuinely very afraid to see it because I genuinely do not like horror movies, and I just don't like being scared. And it was definitely scary. I sweated. I had to reapply my deodorant when I got home. And when we were watching it in the theater, I had like my legs drawn up onto my seat, and I had my sweater like up over my nose, I don't know. But there was never a full turn away, cover my face, like, oh my gosh, I can't even look at that.
Yeah, I think it was
scary. It was tense, but it wasn't.
Yeah, it was unsettling more than it was scary. I think there were a few moments in the beginning that were actually kind of scary, but
the world building
on the whole, it wasn't scary, which is something I would also say about Get Out. It wasn't actually that scary, which is why I think...
Yeah, Get Out only had one part where I had to full-on look away, and that was, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it by now, at the end when they're doing the brain swap, or they're going to do the brain swap.
But that's just kind of gory.
That's what I'm saying. I don't like that.
Yeah, but there weren't like really serious scares in that movie, and I had, if I had a disappointment with Us, it's that the trailer actually did make it look quite scary.
Like it was going to be horrifying in a more obvious way than Get Out was, but it was pretty similar in terms of scaring it. Like, still scary. Jordan Peele tweeted, it's a horror movie, and I agree, I think it is. It just wasn't a typical.
No, it was a very, like... It was scary, but it wasn't pee your pants scary. It was popcorn movie scary, which is fine. And I think he also...
No, it wasn't popcorn movie scary. Popcorn movie scary is like...
Oh, that's fair. No, you're fair. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That was harsh.
Yeah, just say into the mic, I was wrong, Emma was right.
Well, of course you were. I know.
No, but it's like its own class of horror movie. I agree. It's not pee your pants or whatever your scale is. Mine is turn face away, and it wasn't,
but it isn't obvious,
like classic whatever. It's like its own building of like tense.
Yeah, that's fair. Ugh. He also, I'm sure this frustrates some people, but there are still enough laughs sprinkled in throughout the movie that it can sometimes cut the tension. I'm thinking, well, I like it too, but I could also see how it frustrates people, and I don't want to make it sound like I don't like it, because I do. I think it works really well in his movies, but there is the chance that it does detract from potential scariness. I'm thinking specifically of a scene. I mean, people who have seen the trailer know what happens. The doppelganger family shows up at the real family's house, and they're breaking in, and you obviously think they're gonna they're crawling on the house, they're like crawling up the trees, it's all spooky, and then rather than like crashing through the windows, one of them finds a key under a rock outside, like a hider key, and Winston Duke's character is like, what kind of white people shit is that? And it was hilarious. It's a really funny line, but it's a really tense moment in the movie, and it's sort of, it was a moment of levity that sort of detracted from it. But I don't want to talk about this too much. I don't want to lean on this too much at the beginning, because that's dumb. I don't want to criticize this movie so early in the conversation because it's dumb. It was a great movie.
I also think that people shouldn't brush aside the comedy as a bad thing and like cutting tension. I think that's the awesomeness of duality of horror versus comedy, which Jordan Peele talked about when Get Out came out, that they're like very similar genres in a way that people don't often acknowledge.
Yeah, because they're instinct based.
And so, instinct based, and so I think that all goes together. It's like you're very scared. They're coming up to the house. What's going to happen? How are they going to break in? What are they going to do when they break in? Well, funny line. You're kind of like, oh, yeah.
Well, my point of bringing this up is that just people who are going in expecting a terrifying movie should probably check their expectations at the door, because it's not a terrifying movie. It's unsettling and it's creepy, but it's not horrifying. I don't know that it'll keep me up at night.
No, I don't think it'll keep me up at night either. But, well, it won't keep me up at night because I'm terrified. It will keep me up at night because I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And not like being scared of it, but like there's just a lot of food for thought.
Yes, and before we dive into that food for thought, I think the general praise for how good the screenplay is obvious, and how good the acting is, because
oh my gosh,
especially Lupita Nyong'o. I mean, you could pretty much guess she was going to be great, but Winston Duke, who I really wasn't familiar with, and the two actors that played the children, they were all great. And even and Tim Heidecker was fun, and Elizabeth Moss was deranged in a really fun way for a pretty small role. It was just good acting pretty much across the board from the leads. So, and they also made really clever use of the cinematography and the music. It was a solid movie.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is the food for thought that makes it better than Get Out, in my opinion. And so now this is where we're going to transition into the heavy spoiler territory, I think.
Yes.
Because this is where we're actually going to talk about what happens in the movie. So, yeah.
So don't listen if you haven't seen it yet, because you should go in with a blank slate, I think.
Yeah. So 3, 2, 1.
Spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Here we are.
I guessed the twist to this movie from watching.
You guessed it
watching the trailer, because in the trailer and in the beginning of the movie, they play "I've Got 5" on it, and Lupita Nyong'o.
They're in the car. Everybody's listening.
Yeah, and asks her son to get in rhythm and start snapping, and it is off. It's not on beat at all, and I didn't.
And you picked up on that right away, and you said that
first
after
time
the
I watched
first
the
time
trailer,
we watched
yeah.
the trailer, and I was like, oh, I guess like it wasn't something that I super honed in on, but you did. You honed in on it right away.
Because it bothered me, because she wasn't in rhythm at all, and something
With
about
the
that
music.
read so strangely to me. And it was also true once it also happened in the movie, and it was clear it wasn't just like an editing mistake. It's significant, and of course it turns out that there's this long intro that I kind of didn't expect in 1986, where Lupita Nyong'o as a child is at this fairground, and she wanders
She's
off
at a boardwalk.
Well, it's a fairground on a boardwalk. Whatever.
Yeah.
She wanders off, and she goes into this like fun house and gets lost and runs into her doppelganger. It turns out at the end of the movie that the doppelganger, that you think it's that same doppelganger that's been chasing her throughout the whole movie.
They switched places.
Yeah, and the human, real person, Lupita Nyong'o, has been the red jumpsuited villain known as Red, and that's how we'll refer to her, Red, who's an actual person, had been switched into this underground cavern full of
doppelgangers.
Yeah, like shadow people, which we learn were created by the government as like an attempted mind control technique to like.
Yeah, it wasn't explained well, and I would say that I wouldn't say it wasn't fault, because
I wouldn't say it wasn't explained well. It just wasn't. You weren't given a ton of information.
Yeah, which maybe it just wasn't that important, but I was kind of like,
The government made mirrors of people underground, and they mimic. They mimic the movement. Yeah, it allegedly didn't work, and the people underground mimic the lives of the people above ground in weird ways. So if a person's walking down the street, normally their doppelganger underground is like herky-jerky and walking down the street, and rather than getting to like take privilege and real people activities like eating cotton candy or whatever at the fair, they eat raw bunny meat,
rabbit meat.
Yeah, and
bunnies.
they don't get, like on Christmas, they don't get real toys. They get like sharp.
They have whatever they have in the sewer.
Yeah, and
just because it's not all planned out. Where like on Christmas you would come down and you would see presents. They're just going down whatever staircase happens to be in front of them, and whatever is down there, they have to act like it's their Christmas present. So if it's a bunch of crap or whatever else is in the sewer, then like they have to play with that as their above ground person.
So
plays with actual toys.
But the idea was that the shadow people would be able to control the actions of the people above ground, but the government apparently thought it was a failure and abandoned the project, and so the shadow people just had to like live isolated by themselves with no help underground. But Lupita Nyong'o's character's shadow apparently had been a success, and leads into this perfect mirror with real Lupita Nyong'o in the beginning, and unbeknownst to the audience, breaks her windpipe and takes her back to the shadow underground world and chains her up and leaves her, thus assuming her identity in the real world, where she grows up and has a family. Mm-hmm. And there are all kinds of interesting philosophical things that we can talk about that. But what was most interesting to me, getting back to the science fiction thing, is that I'm really into like science fiction movies and books and games where you think about the nature of what it is to be a person, and like AI or robots or what have you, do they have a soul, a humanity to them? Mm-hmm. And so you have to ask yourself, like, who do you feel for? Red was an actual person, and Adelaide was a clone, but Adelaide has a family and fell in love and cares for her children.
Red went nuts down
understandably,
in the sewer. Understandably.
And used her human being free will to essentially free these underground slaves to try to rise up.
The world.
Yeah, to try and rise up and enjoy something beyond their station in life.
Right, and when we were first talking about it, or maybe this was just me, but I was referring to trying to distinguish Red from Adelaide. I was saying the one with soul and the one without a soul, because that was something that came up at the end where she was like, they made a clone, but they couldn't clone the soul. There was one soul and two bodies, and I think I focused incorrectly on that, because it isn't that one has a soul and one doesn't have a soul. It's that they're sharing one soul and the two bodies are fighting over
which is
who gets to have the soul. And so usually it's the real person, not the tethered person, not the clone, who is stronger and can automatically assume the soul. Mm. But
it's an interesting mirror of Get Out as well, because Get Out's about two people sharing one body, and this is one soul sharing two bodies, which is that's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
I will also add that there's no way we can go through everything in this movie, in this podcast. This movie is packed to the gills with winks and nods at the audience. I mean, most people sort of could expect this from Jordan Peele after Get Out, but I'm still impressed at the sheer level of foreshadowing and
everything being tied in. Like, and he said in an interview, right, like everything's intentional and there's a lot there, but oh my gosh, everything is intentional and there is a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, in the very first shot of the movie in 1986, you see like a VHS shelf that's in the corner, and it has Chud, which is like cannibal humanoid underground dwellers. Ties right into the movie. In the middle of the movie, they have Fuck the Police by NWA, and it says Fuck the Police coming straight from the underground. First line. I mean, it's just stuff like that is sprinkled everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere in the movie, and how, even with like a team of professionals, I don't know how somebody can sort of
be so thoughtful.
Yeah, everything is so pointed toward the message of the movie, which I think is one of the things that does make it stronger than Get Out. I think Get Out is so obvious, not in a bad way, but it's so obvious in its message about race and
class.
Well, this movie
was more about class. Get Out was more about race.
Yeah, because
not that they're not intertwined, but
yeah, of course,
they're focusing on.
This movie is more about income inequality than race, because ultimately the race of the family doesn't factor in.
Yeah, it's not important.
So, but you have like basically three stations presented to you in the movie.
Main focus,
Yeah, you have Lupita Nyong'o and Winston Dukes. Adelaide and her family are middle class. They have a summer home, but they don't have the nicest stuff. They're friends with Tim Heidecker and Elizabeth Moss and their bratty children, who have really nice things, top of the line stuff,
like
but all are kind of unhappy with one another and don't have any. They don't have
not fun.
Yeah, and they don't have any drive. And then you have the tethered is what they're called, the underground people who are rising up to try and get more for themselves. And the middle class family at the center of the movie is fighting back to try and maintain their station in life. Adelaide doesn't want to go back to the tethered world.
Yeah,
she wants
because she was able to rise
out. Yeah. And that's why throughout the movie you sort of get winks and nods at Adelaide's origin because, like, the tethered children die throughout the movie, and she has an extreme compassion for them. And you think maybe it's because she's a mother, but later it's clear that it's because she's sort of them, you know, like their kin.
She's of them, but also a tethered person had children with a human person, and so her kids are half human, half tethered, just like Red's kids are half tethered, half human, because Red is human, and the person she had kids with is tethered.
So there's there's a connection there.
Yeah.
Now, this is a little more grim. This came up briefly in the car. So the tethered don't have free will, at least in the backstory. They didn't have free will. They were connected as shadows.
Yeah, they just have to do what their upper people are doing, which is presented, what we were talking about with the Christmas presents.
But Red as a human had free will.
Yeah.
So, but she still felt like she had to mirror Adelaide, I guess.
Their soul, who gets the soul, is more tugging.
And so when Adelaide falls in love and has a child with Gabe, Red has to have a child with Abraham. Yeah, Gabe's mirror. And there are some just really fucky things you can ask about that. Like,
think about that. Of like,
it's just
she knows she has to mirror her, but
she isn't in love with Abraham, which is something she states very early on. She just had to. There's a lot of weird stuff at play there.
Yeah, but the thing with will.
Yeah, like free will and
free will. Yeah, sorry, not you. But
Free
will.
Just need to clarify.
Free will and choice in terms of like procreating and having kids and sex and pleasure and
this is sort of what we were saying before.
It's twisty, and the more you think about it,
you can unpack this movie very far. I think I said it to you and Blaine coming into the apartment. I think it was a good movie and I enjoyed watching it, but I've enjoyed thinking about it and talking about it more than I enjoyed watching it.
But you had to watch it to get to this place.
Yeah, so I mean, it's still a testament to the quality of the movie. And I'm also sure that if I were to watch it again, even more details would emerge, from the shadows. Like,
how many times did they mention 11/11 or just the number 11 that we missed? Because we got it on the baseball scores, on the TV channel name, whatever, on the sign, on the clock. But I'm sure there are many more times that we missed.
Yeah, I mean, even there's some connection to the number 11/11. You see it on a homeless person's sign early on, Jeremiah 11:11,
which ended up being a verse about like evil coming onto the world and the Lord not stopping it. Yeah,
and so 11:11 just appears repeatedly throughout the movie. There's also
with the music. What like when they're having the double dance at the end? It's really from.
Oh yeah, Lupita Nyong'o's characters, both. They were dancers. Are dancers? I don't know how to quite say that. And when Adelaide goes to perform her dance and Red copies her down below, the music that plays is from the Nutcracker, and it's Dance for Two.
Yeah.
Which is a real nice little touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Frisbee thing, because like the color motif is red versus blue, and red is the tethered, and blue are sort of generally real people.
Yeah.
Adelaide doesn't wear blue, but early on in the movie at the beach, a Frisbee's thrown like into her sitting space, and the red Frisbee covers the blue dot on the towel.
Yeah.
And she takes it off. There's just all kinds of things like that littered throughout the movie, and I'd be really interested to see it again and see how many of them I missed, because I'm sure there are tons.
Even longer discussion.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Get Out, but it didn't quite make me think about the underlying philosophical questions that aren't addressed in the movie quite as much as this one has already. Mm-hmm. I just think it doesn't mean that Get Out was not good or not clever or thoughtful.
I don't even think we need to
Well, the comparison is just so obvious to make.
Well, because they have the same director, and they're supposed to be on this timeline of he has X amount of horror movies he wants to do about social commentary, and this is the second on that track. Mm-hmm. So you can't help but compare them, but I don't think they ultimately need to be compared as like one was above the other, but I've had more food for thought. I've had more food for thought from us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Doesn't mean Get Out wasn't good. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah. There's also like I don't know if it's anything other than just like a pop culture like reference, but there's a lot going on. I mean, the obvious one is Hands Across America, which you just kind of have to see the movie to even begin to understand. I can't even I don't think I have enough time to dissect that one. But early on in the movie, in the 1986 scene, Red, real person, Lupita Nyong'o, gets a Thriller t-shirt, Michael Jackson Thriller t-shirt, and then in styling her like underground resistance, they're in red jumpsuits reminiscent of the red jacket with the singular glove.
Yeah, singular glove.
It's quite interesting. And also in Thriller, you think Michael Jackson's character is a good guy, like the protagonist. At the end, he turns around and reveals that he's actually evil, which
yes, he's a zombie or a werewolf. Don't get mad at me for not
werewolf knowing. In the movie, like at the beginning, and then he becomes a zombie, and then at the end he turns and he has the cat eyes, But there's clearly something with that as well. I'm not sure if it's anything beyond the surface level, but that's what I'm talking about. It's just there are going to be so many YouTube videos that come out in the next couple days that it's going to be like Us Explained, and it's going to be like 4,000 of them. I'm sure there's going to be like NPR think pieces. It's all coming, folks. It's
strap.
We're seeing it one day after it came out, and so we haven't had the deluge yet, but they're coming, and they're going to be even more annoying than this has been. I'm sure.
There's still so much stuff we haven't talked about, like the fact that Jason has a rabbit in his lap at the end as they're walking away. Like, what is the rabbit stuff?
Well, and the girl has that sweatshirt with the Vietnamese word for rabbit on it.
Yeah.
Throughout the movie, and Lupita Nyong'o eats like a rabbit. She eats strawberries early on in the movie, really strangely.
The only thing you see her eat are those strawberries like and the veggies, water, while everybody else is drinking or having fast food or something.
Yeah, it's super weird.
Maybe it's about like test subjects in labs.
Well, there's also that we're just spewing information from the movie.
Spiraling.
But the daughter early on comments to no one registers it or cares that the government's putting fluoride in the water, and then they don't say anything back. And she's like, "Oh, nobody cares about the end of the world." Like, I will say that I was expecting this to be a much more contained sort of horror movie, and it's like a nationwide American apocalypse, basically.
Yes, I thought it was just going to be them that have their doppelgangers. Yeah. But no, everybody's got one.
Yeah, which again leans into this like social commentary about the United States, because it's only happening in America. Like, I think they make that kind of clear.
Kind of clear, especially because Adelaide says, like, let's go to Mexico.
Because she would know that the tunnels are only under America.
Yeah, are in America. And the beginning quote...
Yeah, says that there's
in America.
I have to admit, I did not. I knew I'd get it by the end, but it was still threw me for a loop. This like weird quote about tunnels under America to start the movie. It was very strange.
Every weird quote that begins a movie where you're like, huh? But you're also like, I know this is gonna come together.
Yeah.
And it does. There are tunnels.
I'm now slingshotting back to praising Jordan Peele's, sort of
vision,
sharpness from a lot of horror movies have things happen that you just sort of accept that they happen because you're watching a movie. Mm-hmm. And toward the end, Adelaide's son Jason has been taken by Red, and you don't know where they went. Adelaide follows them down.
Well, they've already gone. It's not like she's trailing behind them, watching them go.
Yeah. She does it. She just knows where to go, and she goes into the funhouse mirror room from the beginning of the movie, finds a hidden door, goes down this like intricate series of tunnels until she finds this like underground society area. And I briefly thought, how does she know where she's going? But then I let the movie sort of take over. And after the twist reveals itself, it makes perfect sense because Adelaide she lived down there. She would know how to get back.
So 5-6 years of her life.
Yeah, so it makes perfect sense. And that kind of stuff that sort of just neatly ties up what could be plot holes in the movie is really solid. Now, there's obviously still stuff about how did these people get there? How did the tunnel thing work? You can unravel the movie, but where's the fun in that? I think he did a really good job giving it enough there that it makes sense in a movie context, while leaving enough.
But then you have to think about it.
Yeah, leaving enough vagueness for people to fill in the gaps with conversations like this one. Yeah. Which is way more interesting than having someone just sort of tell you everything that's going on in the movie.
Yeah.
That's boring. It can be fun, but it's boring. I haven't had this much fun talking about a movie probably since Hereditary, actually.
Honestly, I'm amped, and I think that was nice that I wasn't just scared poopless.
Yeah, me too. That's nice. But I want to see it again soon.
Soon?
Well,
okay, well,
maybe we don't have
because
to.
I'm left a little dizzy.
Not today, and I don't think. I don't know. It's not even necessarily a theater movie, other than the sound. I think was
the sound
and the music.
Was great. Well, and we went at 11 a.m. because it came out last night. And we said we didn't want to go right when it came out the night of, even though that's kind of a fun thing. Because like the crowds and whatever. There were 8 people total in the theater, counting us. I counted while we got up.
5
so
others.
It was me, you, Blaine, and 5 other people. There were 2 couples, a couple, a mom and a daughter, and then a guy who was seeing it alone.
Yeah.
And that was nice.
Well, in reading online, some people sounds like they had fine experiences, but other people, like when when Red talks for the first time. Now you have to remember, unbeknownst to us, she had her throat crushed and hasn't spoken in like 25 years or something. She has this really weird raspy voice. It's very strange.
Creepy.
Yeah, it's like something not natural is trying to talk.
Yeah.
And it makes sense later on, but apparently, reading online, some people said that their theaters laughed. And there are purposeful jokes in the movie and points of levity, but that was not one of them.
Yeah.
And I think stuff like that would really annoy me. So I was pleased that we saw it not with a crowd, actually. Some people might feel differently, but because when you see a horror movie with a good crowd, it's great. It's awesome. But when you see it with a bad crowd, which has happened to me more often than not, it's not as fun. So I don't really take the chance so much.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen many horror movie in theater because I don't seek them out. But it was nice that...
That's starting to change.
Whatever. It was nice that it was just kind of us.
Yeah, I would agree. It was just us.
Oh, because that's the name
that's
of the movie.
That's the title.
Oh, we've come full circle.
But, yeah, I mean, I thought it was so great. I came out and I said very confidently that movie was a 3 out of 5. It was good, but it wasn't great. And in the past few hours,
15 minutes ride home, and then the following discussion, you were like, "Oh, just kidding." Like, oh, there was some point that we made in the car where you're like, "Oh, okay, 3.5," and then we were discussing it, and you were like, "Oh, okay, I think 4." And then you went to go take a shit. No offense, sorry that I'm outing you for pooping. Everybody poops, though. You read that book? You should read that book. You come back from pooping, and you're like, I've been thinking even more. And Blaine was like,
that's where your best thinking happens.
Yeah, Blaine was like, is it a higher rating now that you pooped?
It was great. You should never rush to judgments when rating a movie. You need to let them gestate a little bit. But even just gestating this one for an hour or two, it is great. It's like I said at the top, it's a grower, not a shower. It's a fun, enjoyable.
Thank you for coming back to that.
You're welcome. It's enjoyable to watch with just watching it, but actually sitting down and thinking about all the things going on beneath the surface, and they're just a little more hidden than they were in Get Out. It's a lot of fun, and I was worried that Jordan Peele couldn't do it twice, but he actually got better, which is incredible. I just am very impressed with this movie.
Yeah.
Well, so go see it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we're going to do next.
Oh, crap. I don't know either.
Well,
Oops.
I guess it'll be a surprise.
We got so hyped on this. We didn't even discuss what we were doing next. We watched 2 or 3 movies that we could do, but I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And you'll be able
hopefully by the time this
surprise you.
Hopefully by the time we can actually start getting these up, because this will have been the 3rd episode we recorded without posting them. Mm-hmm. So hopefully it'll actually be online soon, and then we can
we can just post about it.
Yeah, we can just start rolling. So, but thank you for listening. Go see us. You will not. Okay.
Sorry.
You will not. You will not regret seeing us. I think it was just great. So
yeah, super recommend. Yes. Not that terrifying. If that's what you're afraid of, really worth the heightened state it puts you in.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll figure out what we're gonna do next, but.
And then you'll find out.
That's right. But in the meantime, thanks for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
This has been We Watch Dead People with Will and Emma. So signing off, I guess.
Bye-bye.